Welcome to this month's edition of the So What box, where we are going to be making a silk bound fleece blanket. First, take your silk binding out of the binding package, and if you want to iron the wrinkles out, you're going to want to put your iron on the lowest setting and use long strokes with your iron. Don't push super hard. You don't want too much pressure, just light, long strokes. After you get this all pressed out the way you want, we are going to pull out our piece of fabric. Now, only 3 of these edges are going to be bound with the binding, so we're going to make sure that we start on one of the selvage edge. That's what I'm pointing to here. The selvaged edge is the edge that has the little white edge, or it just doesn't look like it's quite cut. And the reason we're going to start on one of these edges at the corner is so that we make sure that we get 2 of these edges and 1 of the cut edges bound with this to make a nice finished look. Now make sure that you just butt the edge of this up to the top of the blanket here, and make sure that the edge of that fabric goes all the way into the crease. You're probably going to want a few pins, quite a few pins, and make sure that you're not accidentally stretching this fleece as you are pinning it in place, because the fleece is stretchy but the binding is not, so we want to make sure that that fleece is not stretched when it gets put into that binding. Continue around until you get to the first corner, and then go ahead and fold this just as I am showing here. We're going to line up that center crease line on the edge of the next edge of fabric, and then fold this fold over so that the point is folded around and ends up right on that inside point of the corner. So not like that. I'm going to roll it out a little bit, and there we go, both edges match right up. So I'm going to stick a pin right in there, make sure that you get it through the fold so that stays, and then just flip this over and do the same thing on this side, making sure that that fold is rolled around so that the inside edge makes a nice sharp corner. And then I am just going to pinch it with my fingers and use that same pin to hold both ends together. You can use 2 pins if you want to. And then we are going to keep binding this edge. Keep going around this edge, and then you'll get to one more corner. Do it the same as this corner, and then you have one more selvaged edge to bind as well. So you'll have 3 edges with binding on them. Once you get all 3 edges and 2 corners with the binding pinned down, we are going to go over to the sewing machine. Now, if you have extra binding, you're going to want to cut it off pretty flush with the edge here. And then in order to keep this from unraveling, we have to fold it under just a little bit. So here I'm going to fold this under just with my fingers, and I'm going to use a pin to hold it in place. You can use the iron if you want. Remember to use that low heat setting and roll that under, making sure that all the raw edges are tucked in under the binding. And now we are going to change our sewing machine to a zigzag stitch. Make sure it's the widest zigzag stitch that your machine has. And once we get that switched, we will find the edge of our fabric here, and we are going to zigzag all of the edges. So that includes this one that we just folded under. When you're zigzagging, make sure that you're right on the very edge of your satin binding. And it's okay if you have to help pull that fabric through the sewing machine. Make sure that you reverse stitch as you start and end all of these zigzags. I'm using black thread here so that you can see where I'm talking about. So here we go, we're going to start on the inside edge, and we are zigzag stitching, reverse stitching. Now it's a good idea to hold this, see how I am using both of my hands to stretch that satin binding as tight as I can in between the two. This is going to help keep you from getting a wrinkle in your satin binding. Here's my zigzag stitching right on the edge there. And I've caught both sides. So I'm going to keep going and keep stretching that satin binding and tugging on both sides and helping that machine pull it through. That's going to just make it so much easier for you. Once you get up here to this corner, you're going to go right onto that fold that we did, and then stop your sewing machine, put your needle down through the fabric, lift up your presser foot and just pivot around. Once you pivot, you can put your presser foot back down and then just continue zigzagging around all three edges. Remember to reverse stitch at the end. And I hope you had fun with this super simple project and enjoy your wonderful blanket.